This video covers the expectations for the case study assignment. If you look at the syllabus, this is the information that you'll find there. So you have two case studies this semester, which are worth 40% total, so 20% each. So it's a pretty significant portion of your grade. It's important that you understand exactly what I'm looking for, which is why I made this video. The whole idea here is to challenge you to apply the different concepts that we've been talking about in this course and you've been reading about to something that happened in the real world. So you're taking the theoretical and you're making it practical. That's the whole idea. The cases are provided to you on the webpage, so you can find them there. And then also, just more generally, what I'm looking for you to produce is about a 1,200 word to a 1,500 word essay. So it's a pretty lengthy assignment. It's important that you start it early. Make sure you revise through it. Those are some key tips for success here. So that's sort of the basics of what I'm looking for this assignment. Now I want to talk a little bit more about the specifics of what I'm looking for in this assignment. We'll talk about the rubric on this slide, and then we'll talk about the handout on the next slide. It's important that you consult both of them to really get an idea of what I'm looking for. Ultimately, this assignment is graded on your ability to explain a concept, articulate an intelligent thought about the concept, and connect it to the case study, doing that twice, and then being able to take those two different concepts that you've given an explanation for and applied to the case, and then engage with them and sort of provide a critical synthesis of the different ideas. There is no one correct way to respond to these case studies. So it's more about getting the different pieces of this rubric into your response and in your essay. The reason why I like having a very rigid rubric is because my job as an instructor, especially as a philosophy instructor, is that what us philosophers are probably most keen on is our way to articulate an idea, defend it, build arguments. And so this rubric is more about instilling that type of structure rather than saying that you have a good idea or a bad idea. I'm more interested in you being able to communicate your ideas in a structured way that makes sense. So I just want to emphasize that there is no one right way to respond to the case. It's more about articulating an idea and effectively defending the way in which you critically analyze it. That's it. So looking at the rubric, you'll see that there are two different sections here. There's the analysis response section. You'll end up having two of those for each case study. And then you have the resolution response. So there are 3 paragraphs for each analysis response section, and then 2 paragraphs for the final resolution response. So in total, that's 8 paragraphs. Again, this is a very structured assignment. It's done that way, so then you know exactly what I'm looking for and that we're practicing this structured argument. Looking at this rubric, which is also available on the course webpage, so don't feel like you have to always come back to this video to see it. You can download the rubric and look at it there. But the idea here is that in the first section, you're going to provide a summary of different details in the case study that are relevant to the concept that you're going to talk about in the second paragraph. All the details in the case are not going to be relevant to whatever concept that you pick, be it, say, autonomy or soft paternalism or anything like that. So what you're trying to do here is you're trying to extract key information from the case that will be important for the concept that you're choosing to apply. The second paragraph in this analysis response section is just about explaining what the concept is that you selected, and you have to use a citation here. I gotta stress that I'm looking for you to incorporate some key piece of the reading or one of the readings to what's going on in this case. So make sure that you incorporate a citation in this second paragraph. As far as what the citation format is, it's totally fine. I'm just looking for like author and page number if you're doing a quote. So it's less of a formal structure as far as like citation format, but just looking for you to incorporate a meaningful citation in this second paragraph when you're defining the concept. The third paragraph then of this analysis response section is just you applying that concept to the case. And so the thinking behind this is that first paragraph outlines key information, the second one introduces the concept, third one provides a synthesis and says, hey, this concept seems to fit this case for reason X, Y, and Z. That's why we should be interpreting it with this concept. That's what you're doing in this first analysis response section. You're going to do the same thing in the for a different concept. So you first three paragraphs are on one concept. You'll repeat it for a different concept, and then you'll do the resolution response here for the last two paragraphs. So what you're trying to do here in the first paragraph of the resolution response section is you're trying to show how these two concepts might relate to one another. Maybe they synergize. Maybe you can only have one concept operating at once. Maybe they're at odds with each other. Um, the idea is to get you to think about how those concepts relate. This is more theoretical. Um, and so that's with the first paragraph. And then the second paragraph is more of a critical assessment. Like, what do you think the final verdict is with these concepts in relation to the case? So you're doing all this work in the first 7 paragraphs to set up this last paragraph, which is what do you think the correct response is to this case, or what do you think the correct considerations are? You don't necessarily have to give a resolution to the case. What I'm looking for is you to be critically thinking about why we might interpret this case in one way or another. Now I want to look at the handout, and this is also on the web page as well. If you want to, you can download the Word version of this document. That way you can type in your paragraphs as you're going. The one thing that I would suggest is that you eliminate all of the template or just copy and paste your paragraphs out of the template into a separate Word doc and submit it, um, rather than submit the whole handout template um, with it, because you might end up being well under the word count if you uh, use the whole template itself in the submission. So just be mindful of that. Looking at the handout, the bold part in the second paragraph here, I just want to reiterate that there is no one specific response to the case study. There's no one specific question I'm asking. There's no right and wrong answer per se. I'm more interested in how you articulate uh, uh, a discussion about the case using different concepts from the course. So uh, what I'm evaluating you on is not necessarily your idea, but instead how you present the different information and how you build an argument based off of that. So if you look at the template, you'll see part 1, part 2, part 3. Again, this is just guiding you through what I'm looking for. There should be 8 paragraphs total. So in this first part, this first analysis section, right, you're going to pick a concept. So in the first paragraph, as I mentioned in the previous slide, you're going to look for specific details within the case. And sometimes you'll have to infer different details. Maybe there's something implied that you could pick up on and you want to explore that. This first paragraph is just about looking for different types of outcomes, actions, potential motivations, different character traits, relevant stakeholders that appear in the case that will ultimately be beneficial to your critique of it in the third paragraph, and why you think that the concept's going to fit it. So this first paragraph is just about picking out details in the case and summarizing them. Again, not summarizing the whole case, just the details that will be relevant for this concept that you're picking in this first part. So that's usually about 100 words or so. The second paragraph, this is more about explaining the concepts that you think will be relevant for this case. And I bold and underline here, make sure you incorporate a citation from the course reading list in a meaningful way. So what do I mean by that? There's a good way of sort of saying, hey, here's this concept that seems like it's going to fit, defining the concept, and then saying this person said this about the concept, and then explaining what that means from the citation that you incorporate. So start by defining the concept as I said in the first sentence, then unpack the definition in the following sentences, and then sort of guiding your discussion here is questions like what considerations are important, what are the motivations in play, what are the outcomes, certain relationships between stakeholders. Um, Another thing that you can do is introduce a very short, concise thought example, um, or a specific case, and then unpack it to show how the concept operates within that example. Here, you're not trying to make any connections with the case. Here, you're just trying to explain the concept itself. And you want to just have or be mindful that you're going to have to relate what you say in this paragraph to the case here in what's ultimately the third paragraph of this section. But in the second paragraph, you are just explaining the concept. You don't have to say, here's how it relates to the the case in any way whatsoever. You're just explaining it as if somebody asked you, hey, what's hard paternalism mean? Or hey, what's act utilitarianism? You would just say, this is what act utilitarianism is. This is the definition. Here is why or what you would be most interested in with based on outcomes and evaluations and how we calculate utility, so on and so forth, like that. So that's what the second paragraph is. And then the third paragraph is establishing that logical connection between these first two paragraphs. Why does the concept fit this specific case? There we go. Sorry, stumbled through that. So justify why the concept is useful for understanding the case. This should be a synthesis of the first two paragraphs, as I just said, and giving defensible reasons for why the concept is being applied in this way. So this second paragraph and the third paragraph are both roughly like 200 words. So that's 500 total for this first section. You'll ultimately repeat it for the second section, just using a different concept, which you see here on the template, with a couple additional notes. So for the first paragraph of the second section, so after you do the first concept, say you're going to do act utilitarianism in the first part, and then the second part you're going to do, let's just say, hard paternalism. For this first paragraph, you don't want to just copy everything that you did in the first paragraph of the first section. Instead, you want to, again, highlight the details that are going to be relevant for understanding what hard paternalism or why hard paternalism applies to this case. So you don't want to just copy and paste your paragraph 1 from section 1 into section 2. Different details will be relevant for different concepts. Make sure you're highlighting those. That's the key thing here. As far as the second paragraph goes, it's the same thing as before. All I'm asking is that you pick out a different citation for this second paragraph. This second citation can be, let's say if you're going to use Beecham and Childress for the first section, I want to just make sure that you use a different chapter or different source from the course reading for the second one. So if you're using, let's say, the Respect for Autonomy chapter as your basis for the first section, and the second section, it could be the chapter on beneficence, it could be the chapter on non-maleficence, it could be one of the Vaughan chapters, it could be any of the different readings that we've done after the first half of the semester. It's just got to be a different citation from a different source. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, please just ask me or clarify with me. That's totally fine. Here too, third paragraph is basically similar structure. In this second section, you're just going to be synthesizing the first and second paragraphs of the analysis in this part. The final resolution section is again where you're going to be taking what you've done in these first six paragraphs and sort of providing a critical evaluation of the case. So the first paragraph, you're going to provide a discussion of how the two selected concepts relate to one another. So does one concept sort of violate another one? Is there a way in which the two concepts are negotiable and permissible to sort of apply? Do they work together in a specific way? Think about that as you're sort of designing this first paragraph in the resolution section. Um, Again, this is less about the case. This is more about why you think these two concepts relate to one another in a specific way. Um, then in the second paragraph here, this is where sort of everything culminates. You've done all this work in the first 7 paragraphs. Now I'm looking for you to give your authoritative interpretation of this case, saying why one set of concept or one concept is a better fit, or how you think that we can interpret this um, case using both concepts to get to a very tailored response. The more specific, the better. I want to see you sort of employing those critical thinking skills to develop and articulate a very sophisticated point about how we should interpret this case. Finally, you might be asking, Colby, where in the world do I find all these different concepts? Well, if you go on to the web page, there is a document that has all the different theories, concepts, and stuff that we discuss in this course, where they come from, where you can find them. Utilize this document to sort of piece together what your discussion is going to look like. This is a good way to get those citations that you need for the analysis sections in 1 and 2. And so make sure you're using this resource to get some ideas. So that's all that I have for the case study. If you have any questions about it beyond what I've talked about in this presentation, please feel free to send me an email. Happy to talk about it. And also just remember my policy that if you want to get some feedback on it, please send it my way. I'm happy to look at it. That's the I see that as a critical role as an instructor. So all I ask is that you can get it to me at least 4 days before the due date, and like I said, I'll be happy to give you feedback. Until next time.